Good morning. Welcome to the first meeting of Cabinet of the new municipal year and the new administration. Welcome to everybody who is watching online and to the public and press that are in the room. My name is Councillor Vicky Slade. I'm leader of BCP Council and I'll be chairing this meeting, and my vice chair is Deputy Leader Councillor Millie Earle. Can I just, as my computer is making noises, just remind everybody in the room to turn the sound off on their laptop so that we don't all get a notice if someone sends a message. I'm going to pass over to Sarah from Democratic Services to just read out the housekeeping message. Thank you.
Thank you. Please note that this meeting of the Cabinet is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. Please could everyone present follow these ground rules. Only speak when invited to by the Chairman. If accessing via Teams, always turn on your video function when invited to speak and state your name. Microphones when speaking, and mute or turn off your microphone when you are not talking. And if you are accessing via Teams and you'd like to speak on an item, please indicate by utilising the raise your hand feature in the bar at the top of the Teams window. For those in the room, if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point along Braidley Road under the flyover or in the surface car park at the front of the building. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So if we move on to the meeting, agenda item 1 is apologies. I've not received any today. Everybody seems to be where they should be. Just to say that we have Councillor Jeff Hanna out of the country at the moment, and so he is online. This means that although he will be speaking as a member of Cabinet, officially his presence is not here. And if there is any vote required, then Councillor Hanna isn't eligible to vote, but I don't think there's anybody else missing that we would be expecting. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. I haven't received any today. Does anyone have any declarations that we need to note? No? Okay. Agenda item 3, we have the confirmation of the minutes. Now obviously those of us who are voting today, none of us were on the Cabinet at the last meeting. I don't know whether anyone was actually present throughout the meeting to be able to confirm that they were a true representation. I know several of us were there for bits and pieces, but I don't know, what do we do, Sarah, when or monitoring officer, what's the protocol for this?
Thank you, Leader. Councillors don't have to have been present at the previous meeting to confirm the minutes.
So in that case, are we able to confirm the minutes of the last meeting of Cabinet? I would propose I'm happy to second. So I shall propose and Councillor Millie Earle to second. Is there anybody got any problems with that? No, we're happy to take that on. Don't need to have a vote on it if we're all agreed. Okay. Agenda item 4 is public issues. We have no petitions submitted from members of the public, but we do have 1 question and 2 statements. And I believe all 3 people are here present with us. So can I first ask Mr. Alex McKinstry to come up and ask his question, which relates to agenda item 14.
Okay, good morning, Cabinet. Good morning, Leader. This question indeed relates to item 14 on today's agenda, the Cabinet Forward Plan, wherein it is signified that the External Assurance Review of BCP, commissioned by Government, is due for consideration today. Can the Leader confirm whether the review document has in fact been received by BCP Council, and if so, why it's not been included on this morning's agenda? Can the Leader also confirm roughly when the review document will be made available to the press and public? Do we necessarily have to wait until the next Cabinet meeting in September?
Thank you for that, Mr. McKinstry. I have got some formal wording that I have prepared, so I'm just trying to find it. Just to confirm that we have not yet received the formal report from government. It is expected shortly, possibly next week. Myself and the Chief Executive had a meeting with the Secretary of State himself, Right Honourable Michael Gove, on the 4th of July. And we stressed the importance to him of having the review published in time for today's Cabinet meeting. He did assure us he would do his best to ask his staff to make sure that that happened. I'm aware that the Chief Exec had a follow-up conversation yesterday, and we are expected to have that imminently. However, it is appropriate that the Cabinet democratic process is followed in the way that that is revealed to the public, but we are expecting that maybe next week is when we will be sent that officially. Thank you very much. So we have two statements to the meeting. The first public statement is from Sarah Fisher under agenda item 9. So, Ms. Fisher, if you'd like to come up to the table, thank you very much.
Hello. Yes, agenda item 9, reference recommendation E. This is my statement. I know in writing from BCP that BCP do not have a mandate for a visitor centre at Throop. However, it does have one for Hicks Farm, Muscliffe, policy core strategy 36. BCP has purchased 13 acres of Muscliffe for a woodland burial development. Both the woodland burial development and visitor centres will require similar core strategies, core facilities, car park, cafe, communal and maintenance buildings, etc. It would be innovative and fiscally prudent to combine the above into one multi-purpose facility in Muscliffe and solve the intractable transport issues without compromising the essential community asset and the social good that these projects aspire to. Please may the Cabinet consider these proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. As you are aware, and for the benefit of the public statements don't get a response, but it is an agenda item, and protocol would be that the referencing to statements made earlier would come up. So I'm sure Councillor Hadley will clarify the position when we get to that item. Thank you. The second public statement is from Mike Green. Welcome back. Mr. Green, former Councillor Green, you have a question, a statement on agenda item 6. I think you know the protocol.
I do. Thank you very much, Leader and Cabinet, and congratulations on your elections and appointment. Just to reassure you, this isn't the start of a serious haunting Bournemouth Town Hall or anything. This is very much a one-off, but this did happen under my watch, and so I'm really keen that people should be honest and transparent about everything. And this relates to the financial outturn from 22-23, agenda item 6. While delighted by the £10.6 million surplus from 22-23, I'm surprised it was not closer to £20 million, reflecting the savings efforts made. Pages 41 to 46 of the report demonstrate significant savings of around £8 million achieved during Q4. I asked members to probe this discrepancy carefully. In particular, paragraphs 69 to 72 on page 47 suggest more than £8 million may have been taken from the achieved savings of 22-23 to fund future years. This distortion may be a useful cushion for later, but it's poor reward to BCP residents and poor recognition of the work of BCP staff to achieve significant savings during 22-23. And just to make clear, Leader, I'm not in any way criticising or objecting to the proposed actions. I just want it to be presented fairly and transparently. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Green, and you will always be welcome to ask as many questions and statements as you wish, according to the protocol. Clearly we're not going to give you extras, but it's nice to see you back, and you look like the weight of the world is now off your shoulders. So that moves us on to agenda item 5, which is recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And this is about presenting recommendations not otherwise included on the agenda. Scrutiny Committee, sorry. I'm not aware that we have any of the Overview and Scrutiny chairs here, and I'm not aware that there have been any recommendations made. No, that's correct. So we can move swiftly on to agenda item 6. This is the Financial Outturn Report 22-23, pages 33 to 82 of the agenda. The presenter of this report and proposer is Councillor Mike Cox. Do I have a seconder, please, for this report? Councillor Hadley, thank you for that. So, Councillor Cox, if you could present the report, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. This report actually provides somewhat good news given the mountain of debt and deficits that we have inherited from the previous Conservative administration. But can I please let me remind Cabinet and the public of the dire financial position that BCP Council was in just 6 months ago. The collapse of the ill-fated beach hut scheme, which was proposed by the former leaders, Councillors Mellors and Broadhead, left BCP having to go cap in hand to the government for an emergency loan of £70 million, otherwise known as the capitalisation direction. Conditions of the capitalisation direction included a finance and governance review in autumn, a full plan to address the budget gap in 23-24, and a return to traditional accounting and methods of financing. In order to comply with the conditions of these conditions, BCP was forced to put a freeze on non-statutory spending to generate a £10 million surplus and to arrange a fire sale of assets to avoid the loan. A few months later, however, there was a disastrous plan was hatched by the administration of Councillors Mellor and Broadhead to ignore the latter assurances of traditional accounting, to try one last ditch attempt at dodgy financing, namely borrowing more money to cut council tax. After appeals of sanity from the Section 151 officer and threats from the auditor, our illustrious former leader resigned, leaving others to pick up the piece. One of the others, of course, was Councillor Green. This report sets out the financial results for the year in which most of it was under severe financial restraint. Potholes didn't get filled, graffiti didn't get removed, library books even didn't get ordered. It's reassuring, therefore, that having suffered from these restraints, the Council did manage to achieve the required surplus. Sorry, I have to move down. We avoided the capitalisation direction with literally hours to spare by receiving the proceeds of assets sold. Furthermore, due to the diligent work of officers and the diligent and hard work of officers, we actually, sorry, my computer's playing silly. Yeah, further, due to the diligent and hard work of officers and our new prudent approach, we have been able to put additional amounts aside to mitigate the risks associated with future places and unidentified transformational savings, increase the level of earmarked reserves. And I hope that answers Councillor Green's, former Councillor Green's queries about where the money has gone. What I would like to do is to actually point out, talk about transformation. And I cannot emphasise enough that BCP's financial strategy is predicated on significant savings from transformation. To date, the savings which have been achieved have been distinctly underwhelming. Meanwhile, the costs, which are paid for by selling assets, have ballooned. Last year, we spent £15.6 million, of which £11 million was paid to our strategic partner. The same strategic partner, of course, that sold us the beach hut scheme. Colleagues will also note that we didn't even achieve the reduced transformation targets for last year, in fact achieving only 8% of those targeted savings. I would also like to address the reserves of the Council. I would draw your particular attention to our reserve levels, which are again plummeted by over 50% if you include the DSG position. The 23-24 budget plunders these by circa £29 million. The current trajectory is completely unsustainable. Without a significant dose of realism and old-fashioned professional scepticism, you will be headed to the financial rocks. Turning a ship the size of BCP around will not be easy, and I believe the course we have now set will start to repair the damage and steer us to calmer waters. So I'd like to present the report as is.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. So just for clarification, the report recommendation to note the outturn, but it has two other items. One is to approve environment below £1 million set out in Appendix C, and to recommend that Council approves other grants that are above £1 million, one of which is the grant for the Levelling Up Fund. Is there anything you just want to add on those recommendations?
No, I think that's, I'm quite happy to take those as they are.
Okay, so do we have anybody wishing to speak on this item? So what we're going to do is, because the protocol is that we have other members of the council that we invite to make their comments prior to us discussing this, because there would be very little pausing it, and then, you know, somebody actually wants to say something, we need to then be able to address that. So I think it's completely appropriate. I realise that the discussion is around the cabinet table, but comments that wish to be made by other members, I'm very happy to take. So Councillor Broadhead wishes to come and speak. No, we had a seconder. Yeah, it's been seconded. Councillor Broad, if you want to come up and speak, and then we'll go to Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Chair. And again, I'd like to echo Mr. Green's congratulations to you all, and very much welcome to the first Cabinet of the new term. I have just one question on this item, which is about the surplus that Mr. Green mentioned in his previous statement earlier on. Although before I do that, I think it is worth just correcting some of the words that we've just heard. There was a suggestion that actually getting ahead as we did of the cost of living situation last year, which ended up with 55 million of new pressures onto the council over 2 years. We started that in summer of last year. That was why the spending controls were put in place. And just to be really clear, those spending controls were for new expenditure that wasn't already approved in the budget. So actually things like potholes were fully funded last year, graffiti was fully funded last year, etc., etc. There was no reduction in spend in a number of those areas. One of the things that we did do over the last 3 years in an effort to be as financially prudent as possible was to try and run as much of a surplus as possible. And so for the last 3 years running, the council has run a surplus. I think it was £14 million the previous year, and that has helped mitigate the ongoing pressures that all local authorities are having. And as it says in this report, we were successful in hitting the target of 10.6 million for the last year's outturned surplus figure. But the report also talks around extra monies earmarked for other purposes, and I'll ask a question later on about the amount that was put aside for future places. But we also know that in order to avoid the capitalisation direction, some extra of the surplus was used for the Children's Services Transformation Programme as well. So it's pretty clear that the surplus that we had wasn't 10.6, it was more than that. I had a meeting with the Chief Exec earlier on this week who confirmed it was more than the 10.6. So I have just a really simple question. Despite where all of the funds for the surplus has gone, what figure was the surplus that we ran last year? Because as Mr. Green pointed out, we had thought it would be closer to the 20 million mark than the 10 million mark. Nowhere in this report does it actually give a figure. So I'd just like a simple answer to what was last year's surplus.
Thank you, Councillor Broadhead. When Councillor Cox comes back, we'll ask him to include that for you. Okay, so we have, first of all, to speak on this is Councillor David Brown.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I was just going to make a couple of comments. I'm really pleased to see a very welcome return to sort of traditional methods of accounting and financing in both this report and the next one that we're looking at, away from the sort of innovative approaches of the previous administration, shall we call it. It must be frustrating when others mismanage the finances and leave us or leave other people to pick up the pieces of the mess that they've made. But this is it's a good start to see the sort of £10.6 million surplus, and that we're able to make provisions against other risks. But that does mean we still have, as Councillor Cox said, some very difficult decisions ahead. I wanted to record our thanks to all the officers, actually, right from sort of senior management right down to sort of frontline staff, for working through the difficult last sort of 6 to 12 months of financial restraint and actually managing to keep the show on the road when, you know, there's been so many constraints on spending to be able to sort of generate this surplus. So I think we do need to record our thanks to everybody across the organisation that's been involved and had to struggle through things and not be able to do the things that we normally have wanted to do. And I've come across examples in all sorts of departments about things that haven't been delivered that were expected to be delivered last year, or things that were going to be done but couldn't be because of these financial constraints that were brought in, because of the, and it was really sort of panic response because of the state of the council's finances. So but I wanted to make clear, because I've heard from sort of residents and staff, well, it all looks good, doesn't it? The council's got a £10 million surplus, so they assume that means that the council's finances are in a good position and strong. And I just wanted to make clear that it's far from that. It's not a case of, oh, £10 million surplus, we've got plenty of money. It's, we need that to keep the show on the road and to be able to keep us going over the next couple of years while we actually try and put proper financial processes in place and actually manage the finances responsibly. So it's far from an indication that the council's finances are strong. It's an indication that extreme measures have had to be taken to manage the council's finances to ensure that we can avoid insolvency or bankruptcy in the future and give us a chance of actually delivering what this council needs to deliver. So I just wanted to put that on record, because I have heard people say, oh, council's finances are strong, we're fine, but it's far from that. This is the first measure we need to actually be able to sort of stabilise the council's finances, and unfortunately there's going to be difficult decisions over the next year or two at least to keep working in that way. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Councillor Brown. And Councillor Hadley?
Thank you, Leader. First off, in Appendix A, the revenue outturn, I believe a spelling mistake, paragraph 30 talks about a long-term contact with a major provider, and it should be contract. So it's just a correction there, if I may. I think the general point I would make, and it's been made by others, but I made it to the previous administration every time that the budget was mentioned. And it reflects what Councillor Brown's just been talking about. They run down our reserves significantly. They capitalise things that were revenue, including highways maintenance, which of course comes every year, and that puts costs into the future. They deferred many of the cuts that they made for 6 months, which makes them our cuts, which makes the public think that we make these cuts. And there's some really unpalatable things that we are having to consider now, which are baked into the budget as of February under the previous administration and in this outturn, which we will have to work through with the public. And they also made significant increase to the loans, which again hits future council tax. So those things are not anywhere near as rosy as the 10 million. And actually, the idea that that it was more, we have significant provision that we need to worry about into the future. I think the other bit of that is the lack of sustainability. So we're finding that things that were done under the Cleaner, Greener, Safer, that took money that had been intended for transformation, and it put it into very short term, making the streets shiny and clean. And those services now have to return to the levels that they were at previously, or actually lower than the levels they were at previously, to try and fill the financial hole. And also the pause in revenue had significant impacts on the services that everyone runs. So again, as Councillor Brown congratulated the staff top to bottom of the organisation. They have had to work through really difficult times and try and keep services going, keep the public happy with significantly less money and ability to actually do their job, to spend the money to deliver the services that we and our taxpayers expect. And the other element, and it does come up in the report repeatedly, is around the uncertainty of energy costs and the significant energy costs that obviously impact budgets right the way across the council, because it's something that many services use, and that's an area certainly that I'd like to get my teeth into in terms of how we can be more energy efficient and reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. So that was what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hadley. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to raise the issue of the DSG, the high needs block. What may have escaped the attention of some members of the public, I'm sure, because of the complexity of this, is the alarming accumulated deficit that is, I think I've got the figures right, is supposed to be, it could be at £218 million by 2027. I note that you and the Chief Executive wrote to Michael Gove a couple of weeks about what the position was, what the government's position was. So I just wondered if there's any update on that, and whether essentially what the latest is in terms of the government's position, and whether it is something we really need to worry about, or whether the government is going to take care of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. I'm going to ask the Chief Executive to respond on that, because I think we have had, there is an update.
Thank you, Leader. It's just something which we haven't had a chance to fully update the Leader on, but we've had a letter inviting us to join the safety valve programme, which is the level above the Delivering Better Value programme. Literally had a meeting just before this to have a look at pros and cons of that. So there is recognition in central government, particularly amongst DFE, of the scale of the challenge that we're facing, and clearly it's a more significant scale than it was last year and the year before, but we need to consider that, and then we'll bring something to the Cabinet for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask for some clarification? It may be that it's Adam, the Section 151 officer, it may be Mike, Councillor Cox can answer it. And it's a comment about the principle of having a very large outturn over the last couple of years. I'm aware that we've, you know, how can I put this? If I was running my finances at home and I had a really clear understanding of what my incomings and outgoings were month on month, I would expect there to not be a massive outturn at the end of every year. I would actually expect that each month I would have a, you know, if I had more money in the bank, I would set it aside into my savings reserves, or I would be spending it on my services, perhaps fixing my roof. And at the end of the year, I then wouldn't have a shed load of money in my bank account. I know we've got a new finance system in place, and I know, like with any new systems, it's, you know, it means that we've all got to change how we do things. But I'm wondering if having a more robust finance system in place may lead to less significant outturns. And I'm slightly worried that if next year we don't have a massive outturn, there might be some you know, cries of horror that we haven't got a massive outturn if actually we've managed things month by month within the year more closely. And I'm just wondering if I could comment on that.
Thank you, Leader. I suppose, you know, my response is just to reference the fact that the financial outturn for the year was £10.582 million, and that is the figure that we were forecasting as at Q3. And clearly there was a complete financial strategy authority to deliver that figure, because that is the figure that was being used to underpin the 23-24 budget. Now, I do expenses in that final quarter on top of that, but those variances, I think previous Councillor Green has referred to them, were used in mitigation around known issues that were in the system. And, you know, that is part of the, if you like, the annual process is to review all your liabilities at year end and make provision where you are required to, based on the level of risk. So, you know, we achieved what we set out to achieve at Q3. There were some variances. They helped in that mitigation strategy, but rest assured, any variances over and above that, we will be looking long and hard at to see the ability to potentially mitigate some of the underlying risks that have been articulated with the 23-24 budget.
Thanks, Adam. Anyone else in Cabinet wanting to speak on this? If not, we'll go back to Councillor Cox.
Thanks, Leader, and thanks, Adam, for clarifying that position. One thing I do want to clarify, I want to directly answer Councillor Broadhead's question about what is the surplus, and I appreciate Adam's already answered that one. The surplus is 10.6 million. But what I would suggest is that actually it's not that. It's actually there's every year we draw down 30 million pounds from reserves. We have done for the last few years. So in actual fact, it's significantly less than that. We are in deficit. If you stop taking, you know, sooner or later we're going to have to stop taking 30 million pounds from reserves because the reserves won't be there. And so in actual fact, the real deficit, once you start taking money from reserves, is actually 20 million pounds, not a surplus of 10 million pounds. So I think that's the key understanding that we need to take away from that. You know, and I appreciate all the hard work that was done by officers to put this together, but that is the reality of the situation. And if the former administration hasn't grasped that, then I'm very sad. Thank you.
Did you want to sum up at all, Councillor Cox? Or are you happy that we've got everything we need in order to proceed?
Quite happy that we've got everything we need.
Okay. So we have 3 recommendations in front of us: to note the outturn report and to approve it, one capital environment, and to recommend to council to accept those over £1 million. Can we take a vote? All those in favour? That is unanimous. So thank you for that. We move on to agenda item 7, which is the medium-term financial plan update, which again is going to be presented by Councillor Cox. Do we have a seconder for this paper? Councillor Wilson is happy to second this one. So over to you, Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Leader. This is the first medium-term financial plan, which sets out a completely new vision for the way the finances of this authority will be run. Gone will be the non-traditional financing models, so loved by the previous Conservative administration, and back will come some prudent, honest, traditional and transparent accounting and financing. As a first act, we have deleted any saving lines which have not been scrutinised and are unsubstantiated. The previous presentations masked some fundamental risks which lay within the financial records. The net result of this transparent approach shows the deceit which was previously peddled by the previous administration. As already confirmed, the Conservatives inherited a balanced budget which they took over from the Unity Alliance after adding back COVID grants. They have left us with a £44 million deficit, including 9 million of unidentified savings in the current year and 1.6 million from the last year. This was a direct result of the spending on vanity projects, failed transformation targets and uncontrolled spending. We have been left with a mountain to climb, and it will be painful. We need to be bold and challenge this is the way we've always done it approach. We will need to think the unthinkable sometimes, I'm afraid. In order to achieve a balanced budget for 24-25, we must start the process by preparing the budget now. And as an administration, we are committed to connecting with members and the public and to listen to views and opinions, no matter where they come from. I would therefore recommend the Cabinet approve item 1 on with the budget timetable and process. Allied to this, I would therefore recommend that the Cabinet approve the financial strategy, which is set out in Appendix B, and endorse the savings and efficiency proposals, which we have been working very hard on with officers since the elections in May. As a second act, we have committed to reduce the debt threshold from 1.334 billion to 755 million, partly to risk levels and partly to hand scrutiny to the Audit and Governance Committee. I therefore recommend that we ask Audit and Governance to consider recommending this reduction to Council for approval. If we are to continue to pursue the transformational projects, we need to fund this by the disposal. A cross-party working group has recommended that it's to be disposed of, and to achieve this, I would recommend that the Council put up for approval with a small variation, I'm told, not an adjustment, to the wording to enable flexibility should we need to sell any income-producing assets. And that variation is, I'll read it here, that the Council delegates, the Cabinet delegates to the Director of Finance, in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance, the assets to be put forward to the Council for disposal from the list endorsed by the cross-party strategic disposal working party, as set out in Appendix C. The problems associated with governance arrangements which have surrounded BCP Future Places are well documented. There needs to be a root and branch overhaul of our regeneration. In order to protect the taxpayers of BCP, we are recommending a reduction in the working loan. However, I have again varied the recommendation, and I would like to add that it adds the reduction in the working capital facility for BCP Future Places, the value and timing of the reduction to be delegated to the Director of Finance in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance. This gives much more flexibility in managing that particular company. So I would therefore like to put forward the recommendations formally to the Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Go into any discussion. I just clarify that if Cabinet wish to discuss the detail of the exempt Appendix D, the meeting will be required to move into confidential session. So just to make that clear. So just for clarity, because I know it can sometimes be quite difficult to follow this, recommendations 1 to 4 are for us as Cabinet. Recommendations 5 and 6 are to go to Council. Both of those recommendations have been amended, and those will be the change to the wording will be appended into the minutes. One around the disposal of assets in conjunction with the portfolio holder and the Section 151 officer, and the other one around the amount and deduction in the working capital loan facility. But they're both clarifying that the intention is to dispose some assets in order to be able to fund transformation, and the intention is to reduce the working capital facility for Future Places. Can I also just clarify on recommendation 4 regarding the debt threshold reduction? I believe this is on the agenda for tomorrow's meeting of Audit and Governance under the Treasury Management Report. So therefore it will be in a position for Audit and Governance to have made their recommendation in time for the next full council meeting, which is on the 12th of September. So that item will go to September full council, as will items 5 and 6. So all of these would be confirmed at the next full council. So is there anybody that wishes to speak on this? Councillor Broadhead, I had a feeling that you might. If you'd like to come up and say what you would like to say.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I've got two areas that I just wish to comment on this item. The first is back to that question of surplus, and there was a reason I asked the question, and I still haven't had a satisfactory answer. The true answer is that the surplus last year was in excess of 10.6 million, and it even says in this report under item number 9, it says that there was a 10.6 million pound surplus, as well as extras such as providing mitigation for emerging risks. And later on in the report, it identifies that the mitigation of just one of those risks, the BCP Future Places risk, as it's outlined in here, is 4 million. So we know that the outturn and the surplus is at least 14.6 million, but as we also know, an element of that was used to cover other risks as well. And the reason, and I will keep probing on this, and if need be, I'll do a freedom of information request, because the reason it's so critical to know what the surplus is that does give you in-year flexibility to be able to make decisions about your own priorities. And an example of that is the £4 million provision that's been made for BCP Future Places. As colleagues will know, we've always had to do regeneration. Traditionally, it's been done in-house. That's a fully revenue costed model, and it hasn't been very successful in-house, almost in most local authorities. And the only time that regeneration has been successful in this area and in many other areas is when there are other functions that do it, either through a joint venture or through council-owned companies. It's a way you can secure the experience, and that's why BCP Future Places was originally set up. However, following that, at the large insistence actually of our Chief Financial Officer, after Future Places was set up, the model, his insistence was changed to become instead of a revenue-based model, it was. Apologies.
Sorry, Section 151 officer.
That is not true. I did not request a change to that model. The administration at the time required officers to look at alternative financing of BCP Future Places because they didn't want the revenue cost hitting the revenue account. So I do not believe that statement to be true.
Thank you, Section 151 officer.
I'll carry on if I may. The change that was made was, as the financial officer has pointed out, to move away from a revenue supported model to one where the actual costs of the project themselves could be covered, the costs of the regeneration function could be covered by the projects themselves for the capitalisation model. And the reason that's beneficial, I think it was the right move to make incidentally, was that you don't have to worry about the revenue ongoing revenue costs of regeneration when it's done correctly. And actually, to put aside £4 million to cover a risk of that is actually a political choice, because it actually says in the previous paper that we dealt with in Cabinet today under item 70, item number 17 in the previous paper, Appendix E, it actually says that although only £73,000 has been invoiced to the council so far of the £3.3 million of Future Places work, this is the expectation is that most of this, if not all of this, will be invoiced and recovered in due course when the corresponding works are complete. So many other points within Future Places that cover risk element of the work expended today, but even in your own papers, it says that there shouldn't be any risk so long as the projects are carried on into the future. So we've then got a situation that you are putting aside £4 million for what, according to the own papers, of a risk that shouldn't happen. Now that £4 million could be covered, its revenue cost, it could be covered to help people with cost of living, it could be helped to fund the air festival in the future, but it is a choice. So I'd strongly urge looking at what the total surplus is and ensure that you're actually using it to cover the right risks in the right areas.
Could you just pause there, please, Councillor Broadhead? Councillor, Section 151 officer wants to come back, and your time is pretty much up anyway.
One more small.
No, ask Adam to come back, and then I'll give you 30 seconds max.
To be clear, it wasn't a political choice with regards to providing and setting aside resources in regards to BCP Future Places. That was a Section 151 officer call. And the reason I had to call that is that clearly there were liabilities in regards to the fact that BCP Future Places had drawn down significant amounts of the loan that we'd actually advanced them. And actually, there were a number of business cases that went to Cabinet and Council for approval in March, which got deferred into the new administration for their consideration. So as at the 31st of March in the old year, I had to make a decision reflecting on the liabilities that were facing the council at that moment in time. Clearly, that will be impacted on what happens in the future. But at that time, I had to make a judgment call as to what would be the prudent thing to do as at the 31st of March in respect of the loans that we'd advanced BCP Future Places, and that's what's reflected within the outturn report that we just discussed.
Thanks for that clarification. I'm going to give you a chance just to
Yeah.
finish because of the interruptions, but I'm literally running out of time.
No problem at all, Chair, and thank you for the discretion on that. I think the summary of that answer is that there is an accounting point to put aside that £4 million, and if Future Places gets on and delivers, you've got £4 million extra to play with. The final point I would urge is to look very closely at transformation, and I would actually say that this is something that needs further probing in a scrutiny session, because whilst, as the portfolio holder has said, in order to present this this huge gap for next year, that's because you've just deleted all of the potential savings that had been identified, and that counts within the in-year position as well. We had, on the back of the peer review, tested and probed with the transformation team about the verification of those savings and the likelihood of them being achieved, and were assured that those savings were on track. So just to arbitrarily delete savings to create a bigger gap to make yourselves to make the Tories look bad is fine if it's true, but what you're then saying is you don't have faith in your own transformation team, and I think we've got a very, very good team.
Okay, I think you've gone way over now. Thank you very much, Councillor Broadhead. Thank you. The idea of trying to make the Tories look bad is actually quite funny in itself. But the reality is, though, every one of those transformation savings was unidentified. If every penny is unidentified, it doesn't exist. And therefore, this is about being honest, open and transparent. And until we can identify what those savings are, it would be completely irresponsible to put them into any budget. If I can't identify how I'm going to pay my bills, then I can't pay my bills. I'm pretty frustrated that you took advantage of the opportunity to complete your point. So I might be stricter on my 3 minutes in future. So coming to Cabinet, I'm going to start with Councillor Hadley.
Thank you. Yeah, just for the public's benefit, I mean, dancing around whether it's 10 million minus 20 million or plus some imaginary figure. Every year, the council takes £300 million from our taxpayers, and we spend it to the best of our ability. And Adam and the team in finance try and land effectively a huge amount of money on the button. They're trying to get to as close to zero as they can to spend taxpayers' money wisely and to not overspend. And that's the difficulty that the council has, but particularly the finance team have, in managing that budget. And we did it by last year by cutting the discretion of all the managers to spend the budget that they had in their own services in order to claw back the deficits that had been built up by decisions that were made by the previous administration. So I think it is really disingenuous to fight over that. It is a point in time. Every end of March we have to come to this screaming point of as close to zero as we can make it. I think the other interesting bit, thinking about regeneration, is that the only time it's successful is if it's joint venture outsourcing. That's of course not true in Poole. There was significant regeneration back in the 1980s. It did some terrible things as we look back now in terms of the way the road cuts the town in half. But that was done by the public sector, and there are other ways in which one can do that. It is a choice, interestingly. The other element of that is around the costs, and the costs of doing it internally versus the costs that have been accrued. We have a Future Places. They are valued. They are experts in the field, but the way in which they're spending money is something that we do need to be concerned about, and we do need to understand. We need to get to delivery. We need to get to delivery on a smaller number of projects before we can move forward. And I think that's both prudent to put aside a provision for things that have not yet been delivered, and prudent to say, hang on a minute, let's just concentrate a few projects and do them well and move forward to prove the model, because they have been sent. They've been set at actually an impossible task of working across so many projects. And I think what I'd like to see, and I hope Cabinet would like to see, is getting behind them, supporting them to deliver some good things well on behalf of taxpayers. And again, placemaking, which is their expertise that we've brought them into. So I think that's really key. And the other element around transformation, some of the transformation work was deferred in favour of cleaner, greener, safer. We know that the money that was spent on that should have really been spent on looking to unify the terms and conditions for our staff, and some of that work was deferred. And again, that's really regrettable, because it has an ongoing issue around morale for our staff, and something that we need to fix. So I think we need to be careful. We need to be sustainable, both financially and, in my view, ecologically, in the way in which you approach things. And that's what we're trying to get back to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hadley. Can I just add on that point around the provision? Of course, the comment about the money comes back if the projects are delivered. There was an awful lot of things that are not going to deliver projects that were being done by Future Places, and the only way to fund that was to charge more and put it into a big pot. So, you know, if we're only looking at projects that are going to deliver over a period of time, then that might be a reasonable comment to make. So moving on, and Councillor Andy Martin, please, you're next.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to offer Councillor Broadhead some reassurance that the Tories don't need any help in making themselves look bad. They can do it quite well on their own, as they've proved in the last 2.5 years. I just wanted to echo what it says in paragraph 23 about the debt threshold, in case if anybody's in any doubt, that reducing the threshold to 755 million from 1.3 billion is not a sign of lacking ambition. It's a sign of good financial management. Turning to Future Places, I just had a couple of questions for Councillor Cox, if he's able to help me with these. Page 90 of the report, paragraph 37, if I may quote, reducing the working capital loan facility to 6 million will decrease the financial risk exposure to the council. However, the directors of BCP Future Places will need to assure themselves around the sustainability of the company, which may result in changes to its cost profile. So I wondered, first of all, if there is any evidence that the directors of BCP Future Places have assured themselves of this. The second thing I would like to ask is, can Councillor Cox confirm the monthly operating costs of BCP Future Places? And I think I have this right, maybe I'll be corrected. I thought that the business model for Future Places was looking to secure work from other clients other than BCP, and I wondered whether that had actually happened. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else on Cabinet wish to make Councillor Brown, and that gives an opportunity to pick those items up. Councillor Brown, please.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I wasn't going to say too much on this, but having heard what we've heard in the last few minutes, I can't help the fact that I just need to comment on this. Just Councillor Broadhead's comments about the surplus, I was staggered. He still hasn't learned the errors of the last few years of Conservative administration on this council, and one would have thought that the state the council's finances are in now, Conservatives might have decided to actually reflect on their decisions over the last few years and make more sensible choices, but evidently they haven't learned the lesson. One statement he made when talking about the financing of regeneration, the way they did it, you don't have to worry about the revenue costs of regeneration. That staggers me, because no, you don't have to, for others to deal with the mess that's landed us with. And I'm very pleased that the Section 151 officer clarified that that wasn't a political choice to make that provision. It's a financial reality of the decisions of the previous administration, the financial reality that this new administration is having to deal with. Councillor Andy Martin just said exactly what I was going to say about, you know, we don't need to take decisions to make the Tories look bad. They're good enough at doing that themselves, and that was why the election results were as they were. Now, I've been involved in local government finance for over 16 years as a councillor, and under the Unity Alliance, I prepared the budget in 2020, and that was very much a budget about living within our means. You know, local government finance is very complex, and it takes a lot to sort of learn and understand, but in essence it's simple, really, that we just need to live within our means. The Unity Alliance, you know, we lived within our means, we didn't raid the reserves, and we left in a prudent financial position. Under the last few years of the Conservative administration, to put it in simple terms, they've been raiding the savings account each year by over £13 million to be able to underwrite the annual finances. That's over £90 million in 3 budgets that the Conservatives have drawn out of our savings account. And it's not my words that they've not been living within their means. That's the words of the Section 151 officer in his warnings and reports that have been made at budget time, making it clear that BCP Council's expenditure has been exceeding its income. throughout the last Conservative administration. And as we all know, with our household finances, you can't keep doing that. You can't just keep drawing money out of your savings account year after year after year, because you get to the point, as we are now, where there isn't any money left in the savings account. So this administration is not going to be doing that. We're not going to be raiding the savings account year after year to underpin finances. And then the other decision here, which I'm very pleased to support, is that the last administration increased the credit card limit from somewhere around 450 million to about 850 million. And then, as we see now, 1.3 billion. That's not sensible financial management to increase a credit card limit to that level. And this administration is proposing to change this. I'm very pleased to see that. And then the other parts that you would do with all your own household finances when there's financial troubles is you'd review all your expenditure to seek savings and efficiencies, and you'd look at what property and assets you had to consider selling them to secure your future financial stability. So in essence, the finances are simple. You know, you live within your means, you don't keep draining your savings account, you don't overcommit yourselves on your credit card, you review your expenditure to seek savings, and then you look at what property you've got if you need to sell those to underpin your finances. That's exactly what this administration is doing, and that's not what the last administration did. It's a stark difference. So I just wanted to make it clear to any of the public listening that that is our approach: sensible, prudent, traditional financial management, as opposed to what we've seen in the last few years.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chair. To be honest, the other members have kind of taken a lot of my points, so I'll keep this brief. But I think that the key really is being honest with the public, and I think in this report and the last report and Councillor Cox's accompanying speeches with them have done that. I think we're in a difficult position, and I think the key is letting people know that, not trying to dress up the situation we're in, and I think the discussions we've had have been very clear with that. And yeah, I just think as well, I think there's other people who should show a little bit more humility when coming to the table after being unequivocally sent a message by the electorate in the previous election. I think that would be all I'd have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I just wanted to make a very brief point around the actual financial strategy, which is Appendix B, which I think does return us to a set of principles. And I think, across the top of that is, live within your means. And if you can't live within your means, don't increase your credit card balance, was probably, sum it up. But I think it's probably worth just pointing out a couple of things, that we still have a number of services that are not harmonised across BCP. There are services that don't happen where one area of the three towns is advantaged to the disadvantage of another, and it's not consistent. There are some things that we can all point to. That has got to come to an end, and I think the reality check is that probably can't come to an end with giving everybody the best of what is available across the three towns, because we're not in a position to do that now. And there may well be things that we started to do that we now have to stop doing. But I think, just as one of my colleagues has said, what I'm saddest about is that because of decisions made around political priorities, our staff are not being paid the same amount to do the same job if they live in one town or another, and that's unacceptable. And I want to offer an apology on behalf of councillors that that's happened, because fundamentally, what is that going to do to our ability not only to retain our staff and keep them working to the best, but to recruit new staff if the person working on the next desk to you is being paid a different amount? So that has got to be resolved, and I know that the public might not. They might think all these people are fat cats. They're not. These are people who are working, collecting our bins, cleaning our roads, processing our planning applications, social workers, right the way through to the half a dozen fat cats at the top. And the half a dozen fat cats at the top, one or other of the areas. So therefore, they're already covering across. So I just really want to make that point, that it will benefit the residents of BCP if our staff are fairly paid and fairly, looked after, because they'll be looking after our residents better. And that needs to be said. So if nobody else wants to add anything, I'd pass back to Councillor Cox for any closing comments and to just clarify the recommendation.
Thank you, Leader. I want to start by actually saying that I agree with Councillor Broadhead. It is a choice. It's a choice that we make. And the choice that we've made is to be prudent. And the choice that they made was to be reckless. And that's the difference between our two administrations. And I would honestly and heartfully actually say to him, please reflect on your administration, because you know, when you're in a hole, you need to stop digging. And today's performance, you've kept digging, and that needs to, for your own sake, for your own political future, that needs to stop. I would certainly recommend he speaks to Councillor Alton Gibson, who is in correspondence with me, certainly seems to appreciate the fact that we are custodians of taxpayers' money, and we need to be careful and we need to be prudent when doing that. Just to try and answer some of the questions, Councillor Martin was talking about what Future Places are doing. There is an ongoing review of Future Places and what they do and how they do it. And that is continuing. So I don't particularly want to say any particularly more than that. In terms of the ongoing operating costs, I've been given a figure of 147,000 a month, which I know certainly they are spending much more than that. They're certainly spending circa 300, but that may not be the minimum. But the minimum is up 147,000. In terms of other projects, other clients that they may be pursuing, I am not aware of any at the moment, but maybe I'm not informed enough. I would just like to emphasise the points that Councillor Hadley and Councillor Slade have made about the staff, and I'm absolutely delighted that Councillor Slade has apologised to the staff, because I think they deserve it. You know, I think the most important asset that this council has is the staff, and that unifying and motivating them is the most important thing and the best thing that we will be able to do moving forward, because by unifying and motivating them, then we will be able to provide proper good value services for the residents of this authority. Going back to, I think there was a point made about how Future Places runs itself, and I know certainly Councillor Broadhead made a big play about the change in the way it was done and the way they did it. What they were doing was unsustainable. You just cannot carry on doing that sort of stuff without and actually what you find throughout the country is that there are a number of models very similar to that where those organisations, those companies have collapsed, owing hundreds of millions of pounds to the residents, and therefore we're not going down that road. That model is unsustainable, and having spoken to the new chair, I think, of Future Places, she agreed with me that that is unsustainable and that needs to change. So I would recommend the recommendations put forward.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. So we can take that to the vote, please. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So moving on to agenda item 8, this is the end of year corporate performance report for 22-23. This is my paper, and before I introduce it, I just want to say that I consider this report to be the sort of last page of one book and the beginning of a new book. The paper here is looking at the performance of a very large number of indicators and projects that have been going on during the course of the year, and assessing them against a scale of whether they have been either completed, whether they're on track, whether they're not on track, whether there's cause for concern, or whether in fact they've actually been stopped. And in looking at this report, we've reflected and said that this report, whilst giving some really good information about some of the great work that's been going on, perhaps is a reflection of the previous administration, and a lot of the work to prepare it would have been done based upon has the council succeeded in a lot of the projects that were brought forward by that administration. As a result of that, when we have read what we said we were going to do and what we've done, there is a concern that some of the content doesn't reflect the reality. To give you an example, there was a conversation about the greener element of cleaner, greener, safer, that puts down as the marker of success is the fact that the summer bedding plants were completed. And I think our reflection is that something that we would consider to be a reflection of the greener element of cleaner, greener, safer. So what we've actually asked officers to do is we've asked them to go back and have a look at the indicators. Some of the indicators that are marked on here have since changed, but this has only happened in the last less than 24 hours, where more up-to-date information has been applied and a sort of broader judgment about whether the principles of the project have been completed. So this is as with the end of year position, this is a snapshot of whether the council had achieved the items it expected to do from the last year's performance. But we're moving from a corporate strategy and then a big plan, which was not actually put through the ringer of scrutiny and public engagement, to develop a set of priorities. We're now resetting. We now have a new vision that is about to go out for full public consultation with a set of rationalised priorities. If we have got 64 things we're assessing people on, you can't possibly achieve everything. So by actually rationalising and saying we need a set of priorities that reflect what are other priorities of the people who live here, the businesses that operate here, and the organisations that work here, we will then set a new set of performance measures. And sometimes those performance measures might look like we're not marking everything. We cannot expect our reducing workforce to be measured on absolutely everything. We have to make choices. So in the same way as we choose what we're going to spend, we need to choose which markers are going to be most important to us. So there will be an appendix that gets added to this, which shows some of the changes. So I really am recommending that the Cabinet consider the report and really note it as a moment in time. The exception reports that are listed haven't changed. So whilst there have been changes within the groups, those areas where there are exception reports where things have been underperforming do all remain. So if there's any comment to make on those, otherwise I would expect that we take them as read, because portfolio holders will be working in close proximity to the directors on those. And if there are any changes or amendments that do need to be made at this meeting, then absolutely we will take them. So with that, I'll open this up. Is there anybody outside the Cabinet that wishes to comment? No, in which case we'll go straight to discussion on Cabinet. Thank you. Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I wanted to come back to the summer bedding programme because, as I understand, there was a decision taken in the autumn of last year to not to go forward with the summer bedding, and there were a large number of plants, as I understand, destroyed. And that was tweeted very recently by a previous member of the Conservative administration as our choice. Well, that would backtrack it because we only came into control in May of this year, and it happened in the autumn of last year. So we couldn't have planted them because they were presumably already creating new compost at that point in time. I think the other element for me is around transforming travel, and it talks about specifically the schools work, which is good work, but transforming travel is far more than that, and there have been significant number of difficulties. So I am really concerned actually in terms of accepting this and it becoming part of the record. I think there are a number of areas where the truth has been spun beyond belief in terms of the way in which this is done. And I did catch the coordinator of this report yesterday lunchtime and had a quick chat with her. She was waiting to talk to you, Leader. And she's very comfortable with increased scrutiny and with us working closely with her on making it better. So I look forward to that. And as I say, I reserve judgment on this report because I don't think it reflects reality in some regards. Thank you.
I've just spotted that the author of the report is Bridget, did you want to add anything on where we've gone in the last 24 hours? Because I know we'd really rather put you on the spot.
No, nothing to add. I've shared with you where we've got to at the moment with further information, and I'll take a steer from you after the meeting about how we do how we publish a revision if that's what we want to do in terms of updates. But completely support what we're doing with the new corporate strategy. We will be able to introduce, as part of launching the strategy, we can actually agree what our future reporting processes will be, not just what we're going to report against, but how you're going to receive it as well. So it's a great opportunity to make things better.
Thanks, Bridget. Anyone else on Cabinet want to speak? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Leader. And yeah, I really sort of welcome your comments initially that this is looking at the sort of previous corporate strategy, which was not of this administration, and the fact that this is sort of drawing a line there, and we're going to have a new strategy, a new vision for this council going forward, which, as you say, is will be going out to public consultation soon. So this is really sort of a sort of backwards-looking report, but I mean, I do find it very useful, very interesting to read through the performance sort of measurements and what it says. Particularly, I like in the report, and I hope we won't lose that, is where it relates it to sustainable development goals. I think that's really important. And I just wanted to say, in relation to the area I'm responsible for in terms of health and well-being, I was really pleased to see, particularly around adult social care, there was some really good performance there in terms of things like increasing the proportion of people with dependency successfully accessing alcohol and drug treatments, and also around increasing the proportion of adults with a learning disability with care and support needs who can live in their own home locally. These are all sort of areas where it's been on target and the performance has been good. And support for carers as well, valuing and supporting carers, and those are all sort of green in the report. And I've been struck actually the last couple of months since I've been in this role about the number of sort of staff within adult social care services and the health and wellbeing services, the social workers that I've met and the staff, the amount of dedication to their role and the positivity they have, and to make a difference, a real difference to fulfilling people's lives, as it said under the previous strategy, and actually making a difference to people's lives. So I think, yes, this is looking backwards, but we really need to sort of note those areas that are green and the real difference that this council can make and the staff of this council can make to support people and change people's lives for the better. So I just wanted to put that on record.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add anything? If not, go on, Councillor Cox.
Sorry, you've already reflected on this, and I do find that there are elements of this report which stick in the throat, to be honest, and not least of which was page 10 of the corporate the peer review, which talks about the fact that the 2023 budget was robust. It was far from robust, and the risks identified were significant, and I do think the language that has been used there needs to be changed. But on that basis, I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
So I'm wondering whether actually, I mean, this is a really difficult one because there is some. If we look at the areas where there are exception reports, I think it's really important that we take those on board. I'm wondering whether we need to change the wording of the recommendation. And I'm thinking of two things. The first is with whether actually we note the presented report, because actually as presented, I think we have to acknowledge where it started. But I'm wondering whether we need a D, which is the cabinet. I'm worried about the phrase disagrees because it feels rather strong. Cabinet challenges some of the narratives and requests that an updated report is brought back I'm just wondering, Bridget, in terms of other things that are going on, what the appropriate timeline is. Would it be? This becomes all irrelevant when we move into the new space, but it does also. It is a matter of the record, and I think it's important that if we're not comfortable with this record, that we will be expected to own it. So I'm thinking this probably needs to come back in September. I don't know whether the first September meeting is too early, or whether you would rather it was the end of September.
I would prefer the end of September, only because of summer holidays and leave. We are already collecting Q1 performance against the performance measures. So we could actually bring that as part of it, because until we have got the new corporate strategy, that's still the one that we'll be working to. So we could bring you like an interim update of progress of performance measures at Q1 and revised updates against the actions.
So could we then, in that case, make an adjustment to the recommendations under A, that we note the presented corporate end of year performance report, and we add a D, request that we challenge some of the narratives and examples given, and request an updated report is brought alongside the Q1 performance report to Cabinet at the end of September. That. So, monitoring officer, are you comfortable with the wording of that?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes, I am, leader, by way of a variation and an amendment. The only thing I would say is that it is an officer's report. So officers need to bring the information that they believe to be correct to members for members to make a decision. And presumably they'll do that again in the amended report.
Thank you. I note that given that some officers have already changed some of those ones, it suggests that perhaps they were comfortable with those changes. So yes, if they come back and they're staying the same, then we can obviously say that we disagree with the report. But I don't want to be in that position. I want to be in a position where we're all comfortable and working together, if that's okay. So with that additional amendment and revised recommendation, can I take a vote? Are we all happy to go forward on that basis? All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. So moving on then to agenda item 9, which is the Stour Valley. This paper is going to be presented by Councillor Andy Hadley, portfolio holder for Climate Response, Environment and Energy. Do we have a seconder for the report? Councillor Wilson, thank you very much. So go ahead, Councillor Hadley.
Thank you very much, Leader. I hope this is a good news story. This is something that has been worked on for some time. It actually came out of Bournemouth Borough Council Core Strategy 36, which was around the creation of or considering the Stour Valley as a landscape scheme. The opportunity that is before us really is to work very closely with Dorset Council and with the National Trust in looking at the landscape and looking at 37 kilometres of river corridor and over 50 hectares of land and a 20-year programme to move that forward. So the National Trust have already appointed a programme manager to work on this on a 2-year period to work this up. And the concept is that the three organisations will work very much collaboratively without committing each other to anything, without working together to a common aim. And that's great. So there's 5 recommendations in front of us. The first one is to endorse the strategy and the benefits that brings for people, communities, for nature recovery and for biodiversity net gain. And that we work to build it into our local plan, which obviously is under development at the moment. The second is the partnership with Dorset Council and the National Trust, and there is a partnership agreement appended as an appendix to this report. The third is that we work together with those partners on fundraising bids, particularly DEFRA have a landscape recovery fund, but effectively that we look to appropriate bids and work on that. And it's worth noting that this work already has a national profile. The fact that we have got 40 landowners and their tenants working together is of national interest as a model that potentially could be useful elsewhere. And that is we hope, in terms of the possibilities of funding the change. The fourth element is to delegate the work to the Director of Environment to progress the project forward. And the fifth is was the topic that there was a statement to Cabinet at the beginning of the meeting, is really correcting an error in the drafting of the at the core strategy 36 from Bournemouth Council days. And I would like to amend the text really just to clarify it. We are not, as we were requested, going to build something new in a completely different place. Hicks Farm exists. It's a Grade 2 listed building that is currently in the hands of a tenant of the council, and a series of farm buildings in varying states of decay and also varying states of historic value and interest. And it's that I think was always intended to be nurtured sensitively. And I know that there are concerns in the local community about the volume of traffic and how we manage it within the landscape and within that community. And there is a public engagement. In fact, there's a session tonight and another one at the weekend on Saturday with the public to get their impression of what they would like to see in that group of buildings. So the amendment I would like to make, Leader, is that Cabinet agrees that the geographic reference for Hicks Farm in Bournemouth Borough Council core strategy CS 36 correctly stated at the time the policy was drafted, and that Cabinet recognised that Hicks Farm lies within Throop and not Muscliffe. So the simple thing is,
Muscliffe, not Throop.
It lies within Throop. It's on the edge of Throop village, but not in Muscliffe. It was Muscliffe in the core strategy, and it should have been Throop. So with that amendment, I commend this work to Cabinet. I think it's one that we will spend a lot of time in the quite distant future, I guess, working out what that vision actually means, what we can do, as I said, for people, for communities, for nature recovery, and for biodiversity net gain. And I commend it to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hadley. Is there anybody wishing to speak on this one outside the Cabinet? I'm assuming that Councillor Wilson, as the ward councillor, is going to wish to speak on this first. So I'm going to pass to Councillor Wilson.
Cheers, thank you. I suppose firstly, I would commend my residents' due diligence and kind of in spotting this error. I think and the passion amongst my residents towards Hicks Farm. I think this this report is a good one. In terms of the Sour Valley project, I think it's something that's been in the pipeline for years, the Sour Valley Way, and it's something we need to be doing. And I really appreciate the portfolio holders' kind of openness to listen and kind of take on the views of residents. As you said, there's going to be 2 rounds of public consultation tonight and at the weekend around Hicks Farm itself, but just in general, I think there's been a willingness to kind of really take on board what residents are saying, so that's appreciated. So yeah, I'm very supportive of the report and the Stour Valley itself. So yeah.
Thank you. And obviously, the Stour Valley Way runs all the way from Wimborne through to Christchurch. Actually, touch quite a few ward councillors. Obviously, the reference for the ward councillor was the reference to the Throop Muscliffe piece. But another one of the affected ward councillors, Councillor Brown, now wishes to speak. I'm sure Councillor Martin, it's not your ward, is it? But it does hit Christchurch, which is.
Thank you, Leader. And apologies that I've been speaking on every item so far. I will not do that throughout the term of this cabinet. Yeah, two ways I want to speak on this, partly as a ward councillor, but also as the portfolio holder for health and wellbeing. And I completely welcome the strategy and the ecological gains of the strategy which have been mentioned. But I think right at the top of the report in the executive summary, where it talks about the Stour Valley as a regionally significant opportunity to ecologically restore a river valley landscape with potential to support health and wellbeing outcomes, access to nature and for local livelihoods for circa 500,000 people who live near it. And it's the health and wellbeing outcomes really I'm particularly interested in, because this is completely in step with the sort of new integrated care system which is sort of rolling out and coming in across Dorset and across the country, actually, the councils in partnership with the NHS and the voluntary sector and other parties to actually prioritise active life prevention of illness rather than the NHS just being there to fix illness when it occurs, to actually get ahead of the game and prioritise prevention and well-being. And this it's a long-term programme across the country, and this is exactly in tune with that sort of those long-term aims to actually provide spaces where they can make natural spaces where that can support people's health and well-being and exercise. So that long-term working with the integrated care system, I'd like to welcome. And also for another reason, about in my view, the impact on traffic volumes across our conurbation. I'm fortunate in my ward that part of the Stour Valley runs through the ward, and 4 years ago I was fortunate to cut the ribbon to open up the Camford Park SAM in June 2019, and that's been massively successful, particularly throughout the pandemic, but providing a really good open space for people to walk, exercise their dogs particularly, which is what I do. And I just think that example of improving the Stour Valley that can roll out across sort of from Wimborne to Christchurch, like you say, across North Poole, North Bournemouth and down to Christchurch, it's so valuable for residents. And I just know in my experience, I'm much more likely to just walk my dog up to Camford Sang now and along the River Stour there than I am to jump in the car and drive down and park by the beach and walk along the beach, because it's just as nice and it's so much easier to do. And I think as this rolls out and the Stour Valley becomes more accessible, we'll find that a lot more people don't need to go to the beach to walk their dogs or to enjoy themselves. They can go to local parks and country parks and open spaces. And the people of Wimborne and the parts of Dorset won't have to drive right through our conurbation to get down to the beach. They'll be quite happy to go to these new open spaces along the Stour Valley and enjoy them. So I think there will be a sort of natural impact on traffic volumes through the conurbation because of these improved open spaces, improved access to this wonderful valley. So yeah, I'd like to welcome the strategy in the paper on both of those accounts.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Yeah, I'm just going to add on that a sort of health warning, if you like, on saying that this is absolutely welcome. It's got the potential to have real significance and really uplift us having an incredibly special place. We all know it's a special place anyway, but we have been really, really good in our transport corridors going east to west. Some of our transport corridors going north to south through the conurbation are quite difficult. And actually, if we are going to make the most of this amazing opportunity, we do need to make sure that our public transport going along multiple corridors, not just one, are really robust, so that people don't have to make the choice to get in their car to come to the Stour Valley Park, so that we have all the people who live in the northern wards complaining that they've got too much traffic. Actually, I know it's difficult to sometimes take your dogs on the bus, but you can, as long as you haven't got 10 of them. But I think actually making more of those north-south corridors will really help and allow everybody to be able to enjoy this natural space, not just the people that live close to it. So I hope that comes forward. Anybody else wishing to? Councillor Burton.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I do find this quite exciting, and just to echo what my ward colleagues have said, because it's the same ward, it is used quite a lot, and it'd be lovely to see it joined up. And I do very much like the idea of working together with Dorset and the National Trust. You can take your dog on the bus. My dog loves the bus. I've also got a bike trailer for my dog, and she loves that. She likes the idea of having staff to take her around. One thing which I do like in here is in paragraph 13, talking about improving water quality in habitats. I think water quality is a definite national issue at the moment, and the River Stour is used. I mean, yeah, my dog swims in the River Stour, but a lot of people swim in the River Stour. A lot of wildlife is, you can see in the River Stour, and the water quality is very important. And it, if nothing else, that line really chimes with me.
Thank you. So if there's not anything further, and there is a slightly amended recommendation, so I just want to clarify, Councillor Wilson's happy to second the amended recommendation and that we are voting on that. Oh, Councillor Hadley, did you want to come back?
Thank you. If I may briefly, Leader. Yeah, there's a point which actually Councillor Burt just touched on around the water quality, but there is a whole the ecologically restoring the River Valley, which ties into the flooding in Christchurch and managing that River Valley upstream of Christchurch. We're currently out to consultation on the Christchurch Blay flooding and coastal management risk in terms of the coastal flooding, but there's equally the fluvial flooding from the river when it's in space, and how we manage the landscape between further upriver is important. Reference was made to it being between Wimborne. It really starts at Kingston Lacey and Kingston Lacey and Sturminster Marshall. So beyond Wimborne, it's not just Wimborne, and again that land is quite important. The impact on traffic volumes is really interesting, and one of the concerns, and it was a concern I think raised by the lady who talked earlier, but also Councillor Bartlett contacted me with a concern around the increase in use of it, because it's a special place, partly because it's a workplace. And we do need to do that sensitively, and I think it does come down to what we can do to improve public transport, people being able to walk and cycle to the area and not necessarily jump in their car. But also as part of the Transform and Travel work, there were several crossings of the River Stour, which were both important in terms of sustainable access to the airport, but also enabling people to do their leisure journeys and routes around that. So I think that's quite important too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hadley. So if there's no further comments on this one, we need to go to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So we move on now to item 10. So agenda item 10 is protecting our coastal and open spaces. The presenter of this report and proposer is Councillor Kieran Wilson. I've got a seconder for this paper. Councillor Cox. I am aware that Councillor May Haynes has indicated she wished to address Cabinet. She's online, and I believe Councillor Challoner, who's in the room, is also keen to do it, and Councillor Rampton is indicating as well. So we'll go to Councillor Wilson to introduce it. Then I will take, in that order, the other councillors, and then we'll come to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you. So this paper sets out recommendations to bring forward 2 new public space protection orders, also known as PSPOs. PSPOs are generally identified as a means of preventing and resolving negative behaviours, and the 2 we are bringing forward today are to reduce the behaviours we have seen consistently in recent years. The Council conducted a 4-week public consultation in January, which set out the evidence areas to be covered by the proposed orders and the timescales for application. After which, an options appraisal concluded that the Council should proceed with 2 of the proposed PSPOs outlined within the report, covering fires, barbecues and antisocial behaviour, and to implement them as soon as legislatively and operationally possible. These 2 PSPOs affect our open spaces and our coastal areas. There is strong public support for the prohibitions within the proposed PSPOs, as well as a strong evidence base to show the detrimental impact that these behaviours have on our communities. A third PSPO, there's so many P's, a third PSPO was put forward in the consultation for some of our highways and car parks, which would have been prohibiting overnight sleeping in vehicles, loud music and acting in a manner which was detrimental in impact on others in the vicinity. However, to impose a PSPO, you need a strong evidence base, which there wasn't. In addition to this, we would be subject to a possible legal challenge around the negative quality impacts. However, this is a really positive step forward in making our beautiful coastal areas, our amazing open spaces, more enjoyable and safer places to be. So I am happy to put forward the recommendations as they are laid out, and I look forward to taking questions from councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. Add on the end of the list of the councillors that are present, Councillor Chris Rigby, who's in the room. So we'll take him after Councillor Rampton. So Councillor Haynes, can I come to you, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Apologies for this, but we're going to do a reverse. So Councillor Challoner will speak first, and I'll come in after him, if that's okay.
I'm happy with that. Councillor Challoner, if you want to come up to the table, you will have up to 3 minutes. I'm going to be strict now because we are going to run over time otherwise. Yeah, thank you. That's all right. We'll soon quieten you. If apparently one of these buttons on here means I can mute everybody, so that's cool.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to make representation on this item. I welcome this initiative to help deal with antisocial behaviour as well as seasonal issues such as the use of barbecues on our beaches, playing of loud music and people not using public toilets to relieve themselves. I am, however, disappointed, as are some of my residents, that the PSPO will not cover overnight camping, staying or sleeping with or without a tent or gazebo on beaches or open spaces, as well as overnight staying or sleeping within vehicles in car parks and other open spaces. I represent Camberwell Cliffs Ward, as you know, excepting Hamworthy, all the beaches in Poole fall within this ward. And this is where residents have regularly expressed dissatisfaction that the council do not seem to enforce fly camping, and on some roads such as Shore Road, which state no overnight sleeping, this still happens. We are a successful tourist destination with millions of visitors a year. Therefore, we need to showcase our beaches and open spaces at their best. On sunny days during the main season, visitors start arriving early to ensure a parking space in the popular car parks, and on walking to the beach are sadly sometimes welcomed by the sight of tents pitched up on the beaches. This is not how we should be showcasing our award-winning beaches, and we all know how quickly such images can be shared and cause reputational damage. These tents also make it difficult for our hard-working beach cleansing crews to rake and prepare the beaches with the tractors ready for the start of another day. Also, seafront toilets are closed around 10 p.m. The PSPO will make it an offence to relieve oneself anywhere other than in a public toilet along the beach areas. So overnight, where would the campers go for the call of nature, as in doing so they are committing an offence, therefore creating another challenge around enforcement, as officers generally do not patrol overnight. Turning to the responses to the consultation on page 216, the numbers do not add up. It states for erecting a gazebo or tent that 6% support clause. That is a majority for support. For open spaces further down the same page, it states 54% in favour, which again is a majority support for the clause. It goes on to say that 94% of visitors are not in favour. No surprise there, as these visitors would probably like the option of camping for free either on our beaches or our open spaces. BCP Council is funded by local taxpayers in return for public services. This includes keeping our beaches and open spaces in good order. Local people do not want to see tents on our beaches and open spaces, and those councillors, such as myself, with seafront areas in their wards, see and hear firsthand the complaints when this happens. The consultation responses bear this out, with both having a majority in favour of the clause. I think there is some confusion around how this could adversely impact the homeless. Our housing department and our outreach team do really good work in terms of identifying and engaging with those who are homeless. And furthermore, homeless individuals have protected characteristics, and our outreach team is experienced in being able to identify someone who is homeless or rough sleeping, as opposed to someone who is chancing it and pitching up for a night or two. As a reference point, camping on the beaches in Newquay is not permitted, and neither is sleeping overnight in places like Fistral Beach. Clearly, it is possible to strike a balance between looking after our residents' interests without impacting adversely on the homeless. Chair, members of the Cabinet, I urge you to rethink this. We were told that current bylaws are difficult to enforce in relation to fly camping, yet we are ignoring the majority response that support using PSPO to tackle this issue. In doing so, it is sending a message that visitors who do not pay local council tax can camp on our beaches and open spaces with impunity. They can park their camper vans within the conurbation and use it as an impromptu campsite to stay. Residents are not happy to see this carry on, and we need to show that we're listening and will act in our residents' interest.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I was a few seconds over.
I'll let you off as it's your first time back for a while.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Councillor Haynes, I'll pass on to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And just to reiterate some of what Councillor Chandler has already said, whilst we're speaking on behalf of Camphor Cliffs Ward, I think this actually covers all wards that have seafronts within their remit. Certainly my colleague, Councillor Anne Filer, who's East Cliff and Springbourne, feels the same about this. And this time of year, she gets a lot of complaints about fly camping or wild camping, whatever the correct terminology is, not only on the beaches, but on the cliff, along the cliff tops, which will be covered by open spaces. So what I want to do is just go back and emphasize once again on the responses that we have received for the consultation. On the overnight sleeping, for open spaces, it says overall 54% in favour, but if you break that down, 72% of them are residents, local residents. 92% who are against are actually visitors. And then we go on to fine coastal. So overnight camping on coastal areas, overall 60% in favour. And the breakdown is 75% of our local residents are in favour, 79% of visitors are against. So again, we come back to the point of who funds the council, our local taxpayers. So therefore, I feel very strongly that the views of our local residents should have some form of priority over visitors, because unsurprisingly, those who are visitors are probably more likely to be the ones who would want to go and come and say, oh, free campsite, I'll pitch up on the beach, wake up, wonderful sea view in the morning. But again, it kind of does contradict the rest of the PSPO that is being recommended for approval, which is no defecating, no light airs, etc., etc. Because I think when someone pitches up a tent, what do? They'll light a bonfire to keep warm, sit around it, have a few drinks, enjoy themselves, which in itself probably isn't an issue, but you're saying no lighting of fires. So I see a contradiction there. So Chair, I'm not going to repeat what Councillor Challoner has actually said, but I would urge that actually Cabinet rethink this seriously, because this is a phenomenon that actually started post-COVID. And I just think that if we don't do something about this now, nip it in the bud, it's only going to get worse and then come back and bite us. But if Cabinet, for reasons that I'm sure you will come back with, feel that you are actually not going to include this time round, I would actually urge you to keep this under review, because this is something that really, really matters to our local residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. I completely understand the sentiment. I know we've all been really distressed when we've seen some of these behaviours, and it's about whether or not the PSPO is the method that we need to use. So we will make sure that Councillor Wilson responds to those comments. Councillor Rampton, please.
Chair, Cabinet, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this item, an initiative which was proposed by the previous Conservative administration, and I welcome some of the proposed measures, including exploring creating a dedicated space for camper vans, which again was a project very much instigated by the previous administration. Areas work in many areas and countries and would be very popular in BCP if sensitively sited. However, what a missed opportunity in removing the proposal for a ban on oversleeping, and in particular erecting tents on our lovely beaches and open spaces, despite 72% of our residents being in support of a ban, and overall a majority of those consulted against. It's hardly a great surprise that a majority of visitors were against a ban. I'm sure many people would like a free holiday in our beautiful beaches or open space, but our first responsibility should be towards our residents who pay council tax, not freeloaders who will take revenue from our hoteliers and bed and breakfast and make our beaches look like a pop-up festival site with associated detritus, and who will need to use a loo, or will you be opening the loos 24/7? Some very critical statements have been made today about the Conservative administration previously, and it's becoming increasingly boring, and by some members of your Cabinet, and I'm going to be equally robust. You need to rethink this. You need to listen to our residents. Don't ignore them. Otherwise, what is the point in the consultation? Please don't, in effect, deliberately attract a cohort of visitors who cost rather than make a contribution towards our economy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rampton. I'm not bored. Councillor Rigby. Who I'm sure won't have anything boring to contribute.
Oh, I'll try and bore you, don't worry. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on something different. On this one, I actually welcome the leaving out the no overnight camping in camper vans and vans. I think I've spoken quite vocally on this in the past as well, and I believe that we've got a lot of residents who live in BCP who actually live in vans and work, and also business owners contribute very well to the local economy. So I think we've got to draw something between people who are coming down here on their holidays, who are also very welcome, you know, and people who are living here and contributing to our local economy and have lived here all their lives and are struggling at the moment with the cost of rents and various other reasons that they choose to live in a different way. I think I've spoken in the past about ways which we can set up to support infrastructure and have ways which we can also provide as Councillor Rampton said, so I think there's opportunity there. But I wanted to speak about something different. In the new PSPO which is coming in, I just want to get a bit of clarity on the coastal PSPO, including beaches and pier approach. It says, on number 4, no person shall light an open fire in the designated area at any time, but in the open spaces it says no person shall light a fire. What is the difference between an open fire and a fire, and why are they different? I do know that there's a lot of wellbeing groups and such who use fires on the beach as part of what they do for mental health support, and men's groups, women's groups, various people who meet there on regular occasions do it in quite a no impactful way with raised fire pits and things like this clear up after themselves. It's usually early evening, things like that. So if it is that there's no open fires, there's no fires on the ground, or if it's no raised fires, or no fires, if it is no fires at all, is there an opportunity to include a clause as item 5 on the coastal areas PSPO, which says about the lighting of barbecues outside of the inside of the restricted hours, except with written permission from the council? Is that something which could potentially be added into this to allow people to, if they are providing some sort of service, run it as something, they could have the opportunity to still have fires on the beach for those cases? And that's all. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Chris. Councillor Wilson, did you manage to get those down?
Just about, I think. I might need Chris to just repeat that last point in a minute. I'm happy to kind of address the first three because they were all kind of on a similar path, really. I completely understand where those three councillors are coming from. I think that there is out of the consultation, there was 1,500 respondents over, and there was certainly a feeling amongst them that there would want to be kind of this clause included. However, to legislate for a PSPO, you need a strong evidence base, and you need to prove that the effects are detrimental rather than just inconveniencing. And there just wasn't that evidence base, so we would have really been open to a strong legal challenge, and we took advice from Council, and they have suggested that we don't include them, and I'm happy to go with that because I personally don't want to lose a judicial review. And if they're not detrimental and they're only inconveniencing, there isn't that, as we say, there isn't that evidence base. So yeah, I think that's kind of the main issue that's cropped up. But that being said, there is other multi-agency work being undertaken to continue to review going forward on this point. So if we do have more evidence in terms of reporting, in terms of situations going on, then we can come back and we can reconsider what we're doing. But I'm very comfortable at the minute to go as we are. I think that pretty much addresses the point that was made and kind of reiterated. In terms of Chris's point, there isn't any difference in between the reports, so in between the types of fire. I'd have to go back and check around. Was it a letter? Sorry, Chris, can you just repeat that last? Councillor Rigby, sorry. Can you just repeat that last comment on the letter? Sorry.
On which bit, sorry?
On the letter part.
The last part that I said was on the coastal areas PSPO, there is on item 5, there's a clause which says no person shall use a barbecue between the hours of 7 and 6 in the designated area, except with written permission from the council barbecues. And I was wondering if something similar could be included in item 4, where it says no person shall light an open fire in a designated area at any time, to add in except with written permission from the council at that point, so that if people were using it as a part of their business or a part of well-being and gatherings and groups and doing it in a way, it could be put forward as an exception.
Can I just clarify something there? Actually, it might be worth bringing Sophie in. I have a particular issue there regarding the Scouts. The Scouts historically have got areas where they do have open fires and where they do seek permission and get permission from the council to have an organised campfire gathering. And those sorts of events, and I'm sure there'll be others that are part of festivals and things that actually are managed and risk assessed, are quite different, aren't they, to a group of us turning up and just lighting it. So I just wonder whether we need some clarity about the opportunity to gain consent.
Yeah, I'm happy to bring Sophie in. But just before I do, I imagine that, in these cases, I guess that would then be fire risk assessed, and you know, kind of like there would be some sort of kind of. So I don't think it will be an issue, but I'll bring Sophie in.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Yes, it's definitely something we can consider. There are, with all PSPO clauses, reasonable excuses. So, for example, there will be a number of different opportunities where enforcement's not suitable. But with regard to this one in particular, yes, it's definitely something that we can look at adding to the order. We did consult with the events team whilst we were looking at the orders themselves to see whether or not there were any planned events that happened on a regular basis that included fires on the beaches, and they advised there weren't. But in order to add a clause around council consent shouldn't be a challenge, so we'll refer that back to our legal team, but should be able to put that forward.
Thanks, Sophie. I am aware of a specific request the Scouts have made around having an open fire event in one of the parks, and you know, actually, I can imagine I'm going to get a message this evening to say, hang on a minute, what's going on? So I would be grateful if we could get that cleared up for people. Councillor Martin, if we go around the cabinet, and then Councillor Wilson, if you wanted to make a note of the other issues.
Thank you, Leader. First of all, I'd like to thank the officers for their very extensive work on this. There's been quite a lot of focus on camping so far, but I wanted to myself focus on something rather less pleasant, which is item number 3, urinating and defecating in public. The entire length of my ward is seafront, so this issue is of great concern. It's a public health issue as well as just a general bit on the community, and it's also an issue in Friarscliffe and Muddyford, so I'm not just mentioning my own ward. Couple of points that, in fact, a local community years ago lamenting the issue of people going to the toilet in public. And if I may quote, a very large number of people in the summer season who use the area between the sea and Lymington Road as a virtues of public convenience, the bushes and shrubberies above the beach on both sides, and the Chewton Bunny area in particular, which is a designated nature reserve, by the way, are used by people heading from the beach to the beach or on the way back to their cars, their properties, or their holiday lets at Nash. And I'm aware they also do this in residential streets. So I know this is an issue along the whole coastline, particularly behind beach huts, but it's a real problem in Highcliffe. Cliffhanger area, which is the beach below the car park, there are 2 beaches. One is ours, the other is the New Forest, and so we have an awful lot of people coming from both beaches, filtering up and then back to wherever they're going. So it is a major problem there. I'm concerned about the enforcement. So just how enforceable this will be with our seafront rangers and other rangers. So I'd like to know a little bit more about that. I'm also slightly disappointed at if you like, the designated area covered by this, because it's only the thin strip of the coastline. The biggest problems in this public toilet issue are back further up, behind that. And I know Councillor Hadley is very familiar with the area because you went to school here, didn't you? So I think that's something I wonder whether we can look at. The other point I'd like to make is, obviously, the provision says that you can only use public toilets in the designated area. And I think an issue that we don't talk about enough is the quality of the public toilets in that particular area. I think there needs to be some investment in the public toilets in the Highcliffe area, and that's not just special pleading for the ward. That is part of the problem. The toilet is very, very poor, very small, and is an issue. Finally, I would just like to mention that I don't want to lose sight of the extent of other antisocial behaviour. I know that's not covered under this and it's not our responsibility, but there's a lot of issues along that part of the seafront and into Muddyford and Friarscliffe with vandalism, racetracks, people using their cars as racetracks around the car park, drug dealing, etc. And I think the wider issue of antisocial behaviour is really important. So I just wonder if some of those points could be taken into account. And I just did want to explain how big that problem is in my ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Leader. I guess it's a couple of things for me. One is there is a distinction between people being upset about other people's behaviour and actual harm, and I think we were advised very clearly by Sophie that we had to prove actual harm. And that this isn't a referendum, so when 51% are in favour, that's not the end of the story. We have to account not least the potential of a legal challenge from for people like Liberty, which was clearly threatened. It's interesting because this hasn't just arisen since COVID. I can remember when I was Transport Portfolio, I had particularly camper vans on the cliff top. I was had walk councils all the way along the seafront, right the way from Highcliffe to Hamworthy, raising concerns about people stopping their camper vans at the cliff top. And we raised at the time the approved campsite, so I'm pleased that it's cross-party in terms of the idea that we really should be thinking about places where we welcome people to come who want to camp and visit our beautiful area, and potentially to take a little bit of money off them for that. And I think there are all sorts of people who come and as their term went, contribute nothing to our society. There's lots of day trippers that come down to the area, park for free, and leave their litter behind from the M3 and Spur Road is full of them every weekend. So it's not just one group of people who potentially are, as I think we were told, freeloading. So I welcome that the work. Is a difficult area. I know that in my own ward there are issues around antisocial behaviour and drug taking as well in the old town in Poole, and it's all about evidence, and the police were claiming there was no evidence, and residents were telling me that they had rung 999, 111, all the normal methods, and yet the evidence wasn't coming through. It is now, and the police are acting. So some of that is effectively, if people are do experience and do witness real harm, and I think it is about having the right reporting mechanisms, the right ways to enforce the things that we want to enforce, but also continuing to collect evidence about the other behaviours that people are concerned about, so that we can consider a PSPO in future. And I did just have a quick look at Cornwall, and I can't see a PSPO for Newquay Beach. So they might have signs up saying you can't camp, but how they enforce that, I'm not sure. But again, listening and looking at what's happening elsewhere in the country is worthwhile, but we can't just assume that this is the mechanism because they say they don't allow camping. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just add a couple of points, as a regular visitor to Cornwall, there's plenty of places you can camp, and actually I welcome the fact that actually we as a very large conurbation should be thinking about how we do welcome people who don't want to stay in a hotel or an Airbnb. There are places within our conurbation that we could make more accessible for people who want to come down here and spend a couple of days, whether it be in a tent or in their camper van. I'm glad that Councillor Rampton has referenced that this was a piece of work started under the previous administration. I actually found a piece of work that had been done by Bournemouth Borough Council and binned because the councillors weren't willing to have camper van parking anywhere in Bournemouth. So it's good to hear that there's a change of heart there, because I absolutely think that if we are going to secure Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole as places that people want to visit for a day, a weekend, a week, or to live here, that we are providing good quality services for a range of people. And there's an opportunity to say, well, actually, if we have somewhere that you can come and camp for £10 for the night, then you don't need to be thinking it's okay to camp on the beach. My particular concern here is around enforcement. I'm concerned that I think I welcome this. It's absolutely the right thing to do. We you know, there are behaviours that we should not. I sympathise with the issue around camping, but I think again, evidence needs to report every occasion. But my bigger concern is the capacity of our beach staff to be able to enforce more things when the ability to enforce dogs on beaches where dogs are prohibited, cyclists, barbecues that are already taking place, behaviours that are already prohibited. aren't able to be enforced, and why the introduction of the PSPO is going to make that something that the staff now have the capacity to do. PSPO comes with extra staff, so that would be good to get that clarity and a reality check of the PSPO can be effective. So before we let Councillor Wilson wrap everything up, Councillor Martin had a senior moment and wants to add something.
Not so much a senior moment, although there are plenty of those. I just wanted to respond because Councillor Hadley was talking about the camping, and I probably didn't make myself clear, but I wasn't talking about people using our open spaces as public toilets. I'm not talking about the camping fraternity. I was talking about day visitors, people who use the car park. So I don't know whether you conflated those two things, or I didn't make myself clear, but I wasn't talking about camping. That's all. Thank you.
Now we've started something. I have two more people. Councillor Burton, did you want to add to it as well and get the full complement? Good, excellent. So Councillor Brown, Councillor Cox, then we're going to go out to Councillor Wilson because we technically only have 15 minutes left and 4 items.
Thank you, Leader. I'll be very brief. I mean, most of the discussions have been around the coastal PSPO. I just wanted to quickly mention, let's not miss the importance of the open spaces PSPO and around preventing fire lighting and the use of barbecues on those open spaces, particularly largely in my ward, the Camford Heath area and areas like Turbury Common. You know, it's really important to remember that, and talks in the report about a significant amount of evidence showing the damage and detriment from fires and barbecues in open spaces. You know, we all know the sort of damage that this activity can cause, and 91% of respondents were in favour of the prohibitions in their original form on that item. So let's not lose sight of the fact that actually, in terms of our open spaces, there's some really important legislation and movement in introducing this PSPO.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Sophie actually for the officer in charge of this report, and I think she's done a fantastic job. And I've been involved from the beginning, and she's answered every question very well. I just wanted to emphasise what was been said earlier in terms of making sure that we follow the evidence of what we do, and that's one of the most important thing that we should do, not just on this particular paper, but on all papers. I'm concerned about the fact that visitors to the area have been maligned and called freeloaders. I don't think we should ignore visitors to the area. I think their views are welcome. Of course, we have to take account of residents. They are our primary concern, and they will always be our primary concern. But we still need to have the views of visitors and see what they think about things. But the thing I would stress is an appeal by one councillor to ask for monitoring, and I think that's very important. I think we should carry. You know, this is not a beginning and it's not the end of it. We should carry on monitoring what happens as a result of the decisions made today, and if we have to change things, we change things. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, if you'd like to wrap up, thank you.
Okay, cheers, thanks. Yeah, so I really welcome the kind of robust debate from all sides. I think it's been really, really good to kind of get this out there. Just coming back to a few of the points that, starting with you, Councillor Martin, like the coverage around the areas was based on the evidence we had available. So I think we're definitely willing to keep it under review and vary the PSPO if needed. And in terms of the car park stuff and the antisocial behaviour around that, that's subject to multi-agency working and enforcement between us and the police. So there is work going around that. Yeah, I think the in terms of the enforcement, that seems to be a thing that keeps cropping up. The report does outline and in one of the appendix is a very good enforcement protocol, which kind of takes you a step-by-step guide of how it will be enforced. I think there isn't going to be any extra staff on this, and I completely appreciate the leader's concerns, but there is a number of different staff, not just seafront rangers, that are going to be equipped with training and CSAS accreditation. You have our CSAS officers, the seafront rangers, senior seafront rangers, ground maintenance supervisors, countryside warrants and rangers, heathland mitigation officers. So there's quite a long list there. And we are going to be working in partnership with the police, so they will have delegated authority to also implement this. But obviously, they will have their hands full a lot of the time as well. I think the PSPO in itself will also act as a deterrent, which is really key. I think it'll be highly publicised and put out there into the public, and I think that in itself will hopefully have an effect. I think Councillor Brown made a really good point around not forgetting, you know, why we're doing this around heathland mitigation and kind of like trying to stop the fires. And I think overall, although this isn't, you know, what every single councillor wanted, I think it's a really positive step forward and should be welcomed. So I'm happy to leave it there.
Thank you. So the proposals we have are to accept the
sorry.
Oh, you want to come back?
Yeah,
so
I just forgot Councillor Cox's point on monitoring. I think it is in the report that we will be monitoring as we go along, and we'll be monitoring the amount of fixed penalty notices that we issue and linking all that in. So yeah, that is being considered. And also I would like to thank Sophie, who's been brilliant as well. So thank you.
Anyone else want to thank Sophie? All I've said. So that isn't clear, it's probably in the body of the report, but the timetable for implementation, this is a decision of Cabinet, not a council decision, so it can go forward immediately. Can I just ask Sophie, in terms of the ability to start work on this, we're now in the summer holidays, is this something we can expect to see a change on straight away?
So the implementation, from a legislative perspective, to implement the PSPOs, we need to communicate them effectively. So that's going to be a robust communications programme to those that will be affected. So that does include our visitor demographic. Luckily, we do know where the majority of visitors come to BCP from, so we can look at targeting those specific areas. Things like signage around the PSPOs and the work with the wider teams is already underway. And also we're looking at the vetting of relevant staff and then the suitable training. The staff need to have robust training to be able to understand the powers that they will now be afforded. And obviously, as you have said, we are in the summer period. So a number of our officers, especially on our seafront team, are already working very, very hard with the influx of visitors that we are expecting. The priority immediately is to ensure that our heathland rangers and park staff are trained in order to try and mitigate some of the influx of heath fires that we've seen recently, to ensure that our public spaces possibly can. So the implementation will be as quickly as possible within the remit of the suitable training, suitable vetting and suitable communications. I would like to expect us to be able to start with at least the open spaces PSPO by the end of the summer holidays, and we will keep the seafront one under review based on their current capacity and visitor influx that we have, but with a minimum of getting them trained in September.
Thanks, Sophie. So we have 3 recommendations: to consider the responses, approve the implementations of the 2 PSPOs with their behaviours as listed, and to commission a feasibility study on the designated space for vehicular sleeping, caravanning and camping. So a vote please, all those in favour. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have the next item is item 11, Children's Services Foundations Programme. This presenter of the report is Councillor Richard Burton. Do we have a seconder for this paper, please? Councillor Cox, thank you very much. And I will ask you to present the paper, and we'll then see. I don't think there are any councillors left on the call apart from Councillor Haynes. So it may well be that it's is Councillor Rampton still here? Sorry, Councillor. Yeah, if they want to speak on this, if they want to let me know so we can move through quite quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. This paper is seeking recommendation for approval for an extra £4.462 million investment over 2 years to support children's services improvement and transformation. This is broken down to 2.756 million into supporting the children's services improvement journey, 0.706 million into the Pacific Children's Services Transformation Programme, Building Strong Foundations, BSF. The background need to this, as we're probably all aware, is a 2020 Ofsted focus visit, which highlighted serious weaknesses in children's services. The July 21 joint local SEND inspection, which produced a written statement of action. And December 2021, the 4 lilacs, where we were given the inadequate. It always makes me feel slightly nervous saying that word and saying it when I have to attend meetings when we are BCP, I am from BCP, and we are inadequate always worries me. That followed then the statutory direction issued on March 22 and the DFE improvement advisor appointed to work with us. We need a more effective and efficient service, and these investments should produce 3 needed outcomes. The first one, in probably is my mind the most important, is a better outcome for children and young people in BCP, and following on from that, an improvement of the current Ofsted score, and future savings to the medium-term financial plan, which should follow on after that. The most relevant thing to note here that failing children's services is more expensive than a good one. However, investment is needed to move from the adequate to good. I realise this is a big ask in the current financial situation. However, we need to do something to help this move forward. BCP Children's Services are no different than other local authorities in that the service is skewed towards crisis intervention, understandably because it's where the statutory areas lie. If you're interested to read more about, look at the Joss McAllister report who deals with that. However, I'm not interested in other areas. It's BCP, which is what I'm interested in. BCP Children's Services on a significant improvement journey in both the areas of SEND and BCP Children's Services Social Care. The length of the challenge of this journey must not be underestimated. As well as the consequence of not acting in both the children's service and young people who rely on us, as well as the future financial situation and the reputation of BCP. I would like to highlight that statutory interventions, if they come, are not cheap. The legal bills alone are incredible. To drive improvements, we need targeted early help. Supporting families is far more effective for improving children's outcomes than later statutory intervention. The report mentions indicative future savings of 3.9 million in 2024-25, going to 6.4 per year by 2026. These are indicative future savings. Of course, some work needs to be done to actually see and understand how those savings will work. Cabinet has already had sight of an outline confidential business case, but we will receive the full business case to support the delivery of the transformation savings at the December 23 meeting, where we can get some more detail. Are there any questions on that?
Thank you for that, Councillor Burton. I think what you're saying is that a good children's services department is cheaper to run than a failing one. So actually, if we can turn that around, it will transform children's lives. Transformation is a bit overused word in this council over the last few years. So actually, but there are some transformation things that need to be done in the department separately, but that will benefit the children. So I've got Councillor Hannah, who is on screen. Councillor Hannah, would you like to start us off, please?
Thank you, Leader. First of all, my apologies for not being with you all in person. And with regard to this report, I'm coming at it in 2 ways. As a portfolio holder for transformation, so I've got an interest in what's taking place there. And the other is my previous life as a teacher and also at one stage as a chair of scrutiny for children's services in a different area. So I'm very keen that this report is supported and that Children's Services gets the support that it needs in improving. The most important part of what the report is saying is the need to improve the Ofsted judgment to good. Although, as Councillor Burton has already said, the most important aspect of that is that children in the locality are being better looked after by virtue of the improvements that we managed to achieve. Having said that, I think we also ought to recognise that there have been improvements already achieved and recognise the work of the director done that. I do look forward to seeing yet further improvements in working practices and efficiencies, and I'll look forward to the further report in December. If I were with you in person, I would be able to vote and I would have been able to second the report. As things stand, it's simply a matter of endorsing locality. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate that. Anybody else wishing to speak on this paper? Councillor Cox.
Thanks. I fully, obviously I seconded it. I fully endorse the report and the recommendations. I just wanted to highlight the recommendation D, and that is to make sure that we do achieve the financial savings that that we're looking for. Because that's very important, obviously, from a long-term sustainability perspective. And if that can be monitored on a regular basis, that'd be great. Thank you.
Anybody else wanting to add to that? I don't know whether we wanted to formalise a sort of a regular monitor. We've got updates on reports. Can I just clarify, under D, receive regular updates on reports of the overall programme? Are we suggesting that that's regular reports after the full business case and until the savings are finalised, or is that between now and December? Because December's not very long away, is it?
I think probably if we ask Kathy Hadley, she might be able to fill us in what is possible.
I think, thank you, Leader. I think it would be important to have the business case and for us to develop some governance around that within that, so you have some confidence of where that governance is.
Can I make a formal request when we're looking at that governance that in addition to Councillor Burton as the children's portfolio holder, that we include Councillor Hannah in his transformation role, just so that we understand how it feeds into the wider transformation picture?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Kathy. Anyone else, or are we happy to proceed with this one? In which case, this is for part recommendation and part decision. So in terms of decisions, can we please? I'm sorry, you want to come back and sum up?
Well, just sum up. It's only going to be very brief.
Go on then.
Because yeah, I mean, firstly, I do agree. Scrutiny is really important of this. And if Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny were to do some work on this, I would also welcome it, because I do welcome their input. I would do, wouldn't I, with my past? Yeah, I do totally agree. We need to keep an eye on the financial savings, and I would also like to thank Councillor Hammer for reminding us to bear in mind all the work that's already gone on. We do often forget what's gone on in the past, and I am very aware that the improvements are made, and I'm hoping this will help us to finish it off.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. So with that, can I just take a vote? All those in favour of the recommendations as put? That's unanimous. So moving on to item 12. So we have 12A, B and C, which are going to be presented by Councillor Andy Hadley. 12A relates to the pilot school streets, 12B the Highcliffe school area, and 12C the Durley Road car park. But it's probably worth Councillor Hadley giving a sort of overview of the position. Councillor Hadley is going to propose them. I'm happy to second them. So I'll hand over to Councillor Hadley.
Do you want me to take all three together?
If you think that's relevant, or it may well be to take them separately, but just refer back where things don't need to be covered again.
Okay, I think actually A and B probably are relatively straightforward. So hopefully that I can do in the interest of time, given the time. So A is school streets. There's 4 school streets that we started with. There is a programme behind them, but these 4 have been going for nearly 18 months, and they went in under an experimental traffic order, which has to last a maximum of 18 months. So they need to be either confirmed or rescinded. And there's been 6-month consultation. Sustrans undertook a report which showed significant modal shift away from children being driven to school and towards walking, scooting and cycling, but also a large majority were in favour of the schemes, feeling it was safer to walk and cycle in the area, and it reduced the traffic noise and disturbance for the local residents. So generally very well supported. So the recommendation is to make those 4 school streets permanent. Subsequently, it didn't be made permanent. There may be some issues around coming up with physical changes to support that permanence, but until we've got them permanent, we can't really consider that. So that's A. B is not a school street currently, it's Highcliffe School, and there's quite a complicated set of roads around the school, which gets completely locked up. It's a bit of a scrum outside the school. It's a big comprehensive secondary school, and there are a large number of pupils, including some obviously who are driving, being a secondary school. There was consultation in February and March, and it was also discussed at the Highcliffe and Watford Parish Council. The scheme is to protect some of the key corners at all times, which obviously is beneficial to things like bin lorries and ambulances being able to get through as well. But then to introduce no waiting times at school times, so 8 to 10 in the morning, 2 to 4 in the afternoon on Mondays to Fridays, very near the school. There were 35 responses to consultation, 25 in support and 10 objecting. The objections, some of them were just around why is there a need for this, but I think if you're there at school time, then you probably would know why there's a need. It turns out that quite a significant number of the people parking there are teachers in the school, and so the school are having to reconsider how their teachers park around the school. So that's B. C is regarding the Durley car park development, which was obviously a Bournemouth Borough Development Company and Bournemouth Borough Council scheme, and the part of the mitigation for that was measures around St Michael's School, which is one of the school streets mentioned in A. There's a range of measures there, and significantly one of them is around 20-mile-an-hour limit on the surrounding streets, contraflow cycling on Somerville Road, and no waiting restrictions, again to ease the position. The situation has changed a little bit because of the school streets in place. So when the mitigation was first proposed, and when the council were together with Bournemouth Development Company asked to implement these measures, there wasn't a school street at the time. And so some of the consultation has been around why do we need the measures at all, because the roads are closed. What I propose, Leader, if it's possible, is a slight amendment to item 12 of section 12C, which is to ask the Cabinet to consider an amendment to defer item 12 of 12C pending further design and consultation work. I think it's relevant to pursue items 1 to 11 as they stand because they are the TROs. The expectation, again, as part of the consultation, is to review the physical work and whether that's still needed as such. But it doesn't alter the TROs because they set the opportunity to then make the physical measures. So some of that is around constraining the costs because the cost of materials has gone up. But there is a zebra crossing, for instance, that has been put in already, and the original mitigation for the car park included a raised table at that point. So is the raised table really necessary? So we might not put in all the measures as planned, but the principle of the 20-mile reductions, they're keeping the roads clear, is what the TROs are about. So with that amendment, I commend all 3 of those schemes to Cabinet, and happy to take questions.
And as the seconder of the report, I'm very happy to second the amendment. I'm aware of it, and we've been in regular communication with some residents in that area, and they are aware that we're proposing to defer that item 12 of 12C. So in terms of the discussion on this paper, whether it's any of the 3 there, Councillor Martin, I know you wanted to speak on this one.
Thank you, Leader. I'll be very quick. Really welcome the Highcliffe School TRO, and I'd like to thank Andy Brown and Matt Carruthers for their work on this over a couple of years. Just to advise, at the school, I met with the deputy head last week, and the school is trying to create another 26 parking spaces within the school grounds, over the summer holidays to try and mitigate some of the problems with their staff. They're having walked my eldest granddaughter to that school several times and not contributing to the chaos around there, I can confirm that it is a really dangerous, it has been a really dangerous area because of the location of the school at a conjunction of several roads. So this will be good. A couple of pleas really from me, one to the teachers, because the school clearly has a problem with teachers parking on the roads and refusing to park in the school grounds, and that just adds to the problems. And clearly this will no doubt push the problem a little bit further to other roads. So I would urge the teachers to park in the school parking spaces that are provided for them. And the other thing I would ask is that the parents do not use the approach to the school as a sort of rolling drop-off, because I can imagine that some will just, you know, drive around, stop for a second, throw the kids out and then go around. That will be, in my view, almost as dangerous, perhaps even more dangerous than parking outside there. So if parents could do that, that would be incredibly helpful. I think enforcement's the key as well, so that could be dealt with by enforcement, and we talked about enforcement before in another issue. And the final thing I would say is on the school streets, some good news that St Mark's School, which is again subject to incredibly dangerous parking and driving around the school in terms of drop off and pick up time, they are very keen to get school streets up and running as soon as possible. I'm working with them, as are the road safety team and the traffic team, so hopefully we can get that progressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Earl, I have you next.
Thank you. I was just going to add, as road safety is part of my portfolio, that I really enjoyed reading the report from Sustrans into the school streets. It's really detailed. I think there's lots of information there that proves the concept. And as one of the councillors very lucky to have a school street in my ward, I would really like to see this as very much the start of road safety around schools, so that we're in a position to, as and when we can, but also around, this isn't just about school safety as well, it's also around air pollution, health and well-being, the fact that roads are very clogged and there's congestion, so it tends to deal with quite a few issues if we can get more families travelling to school, and with 20% changing their habit of getting to school a certain way to another certain way, I think that's really positive. And finally, I was just going to say a huge thank you to the schools for their participation, but also to the volunteers. Like, I don't think many people realise that these are stewarded by volunteers, often parents, carers, people in the community who care about road safety outside of schools, and they're the ones giving up their time to make sure these work. So yes, brilliant work. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Earl. Councillor Burton, I think you also have a close connection to school road safety.
Yeah, I do, and I would say, well, first off, I welcome anything to improve road safety around any school within BCP, in fact, anywhere in the country, because as Councillor Sadie just alluded, I do volunteer 1 day a week to operate the lollipop outside my local school, so I see road safety around schools quite up close and personal, yeah, I would personally like to see that this idea extended into other schools. I can talk about the school that I'm involved in. It's a short road. It's a 30-mile-an-hour road. I stand there sometimes. I brace for impact because I can hear a car coming behind me who I'm thinking have seen me. In the fact, I'm dressed in bright high vis with a lollipop in my hand. Often because of something large is parked in a parking space close by, which reduces visibility. I also see cars, strange enough, in the winter when it's cold, they sit there with the engines idling to keep warm while they're waiting to drop off. In the summer when it's hot, they sit with their engines idling to keep the aircon working. And of course, children are walking past, and those who are walking and cycling to school are affected by that. So yes, I very much welcome that, and I would love to see experiments of moving this out into other schools as well.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. I'm just imagining you bracing for impact with your lollipop. Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of things around enforcement. I've been contacted by people who live close to other schools where they're frustrated by the bad behaviour, inconsiderate behaviour of parents, and you know, I'm hoping that we usually get some really good enforcement coming around the schools in September when the children go back, and I would expect that with these particular measures, particularly with the new measures in Highcliffe, that the team will be asked. So I would encourage ward councillors to speak to parking enforcement and just get something booked in early in terms of getting extra enforcement in place. But I suppose this message really is going out to all parents and people involved with schools, and to say that actually school streets they're not the only gig in town. We can make our children's route to school safer with other methods. It may not suit everyone, but actually if it's driven by the local community, we can make everyone's journey more pleasant. So anyone wants to improve things in their area, please contact your local ward councillor. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to help you. But I've been really disappointed actually to talk about teachers. One of the school surveys that I've been given the details of, the parents and families, around 35–40% of them are very willing to do something different. Only 10% of the teachers. And actually, you know, if we're going to be asking people to make a change, it's got to come throughout everybody, that there are people who can journey slightly differently. So hopefully they'll get on board as well. If nobody else got anything to add, I'll pass back to Councillor Hadley just to sum up.
Thank you very much. Yes, and I'll try and be brief. Obviously, the rolling drop-off that Councillor Martin mentioned, these are no waiting areas. They really shouldn't be an issue. I know that the school streets benefited enormously from enforcement, but there are limited resources, and so they have to cycle around, not cycle on a bike. They have to move themselves around between the different schemes, rather than actually the walkouts is going to ask for enforcement. I would suggest, and the Transport Department to highlight to ward councils when they like to have enforcement in their area, or that there is a schedule, because otherwise they might get inundated with requests ad hoc, and I'm sure they're trying to get around all the schools, whatever their setups are. The example of teachers is really important, and again, in terms of encouraging parents to contact the walkouts, I think they also need to contact the school, because I think what we've seen locally, but also what we saw from the examples with Southampton and elsewhere, is that these are really successful when everyone's playing on the same thing. So when the school are really keen, they're reinforcing the message with the children. If the parents are keen, then they're prepared to volunteer and support it. And in some schools, it is actually the staff that are manning the barricades, as it were. In others, it's volunteers, and in others, it's a mix. But it's at most successful when everyone is on the page, and that is about the welfare of their children in our school. And we do very occasionally, sadly, see injuries and deaths at the school gate, and that has a really traumatic effect for everyone in the school. So I value everyone really pushing for this. There are a number of schools that I think are potential candidates. There are another 4 behind these initial 4 that are already underway. There is an issue about resources, but again, it's about marshalling volunteers and getting people prepared to spend some of their time being at the barricade and supporting those people who are walking, cycling and scooting to school. Thank you.
Thank you. So with the amendment on 12C, item 12, are we happy to take all those recommendations? All those in favour? Yeah, it's unanimous and excellent. So it takes us on to item 13, which is urgent decisions taken by the Chief Exec in accordance with the Constitution. So can I pass to Graham Farrant to take us through these?
I don't think there are none since the last cabinet meeting.
There's 3 on my notes.
I think they were all reported out to council, so we've had none. Okay. We've had none that have not been reported.
Thank you very much. So there's none that have not been reported. They're on my notes. I apologise. So that's good.
I did have a week off. I was just hoping that they weren't all taken.
Yeah, who took them on your behalf? Taken that haven't already been reported to council. That's great. Agenda item 14 is the Cabinet Forward Plan. The latest version has recently been published, and a copy has been circulated as a we have 2 meetings in September, one at the very beginning and one end. We know that things are moving very, very fast. Changes to adding things on probably to the number one, including the item we talked about earlier in regard to the performance report. So that's just for noting, at which point at 12:49 I've formally closed this first meeting of Cabinet. Thank you all for your attendance and the public for their attention.